Long time ago, in the city of Abuja, lived a man named Dennis. He was a calm and kind-hearted man. Dennis was a very wealthy man and also God-fearing. He was married to a beautiful lady named Gift, and they were blessed with a son named Richard after several years of being married. Dennis and Gift lived happily as husband and wife for several years until tragedy struck. Gift fell ill and died. Dennis was sad and devastated. He cried and mourned his wife for years and decided not to get married again. After the demise of his wife, he single-handedly trained his son, Richard. With the help of his mates, he did the best to give Richard a good life and also a good education. When Richard graduated from the university, he joined his father in running the company, and after some years, Dennis made his son Richard the manager of the company, then retired so he can stay at home, relax, and also take good care of his health. While Richard, on his own part, do all he could to make his father proud. Dennis and his son Richard live happily. They don't hide anything from each other. They share everything and anything together, and also gist and chat like friends. One day, when Dennis and his son Richard was discussing, Dennis said, "My son, you are no longer a boy anymore. You are now a man. I have been waiting for you to bring up this matter, but since you don't want to, that is why I have decided to talk to you about it." He said, "My son, when are you bringing home the lady you want to get married to?" Richard laughed. He said, "Daddy, calm down. Don't overwork yourself. Very soon, I will bring to you the lady I want to get married to." And they talked and laughed. Some months later, Richard brought a lady home and introduced her to his father as the lady he wants to get married to. Ugochi was a beautiful lady, and she just graduated from the university. Dennis was very happy and welcomed her warmly. He asked them how they met and Ugochi's family background. Richard said, "Dad, I met Ugochi months ago when I went to the village to visit Uncle, your brother. On my way to his house, I met her on the way. She was returning from the church. I stopped her. I asked her for direction, and she directed me, even to the point of taking me to my destination. And since then, we have been in touch." Then he said, "Wow, that's nice. So my daughter, which family are you from?" Ugochi replied, "I'm from Okoro's family, but my dad is late. I live with my mom." Dennis was pleased. Few months later, Richard and Ugochi got married. After the marriage, Richard decided they should live with his father because the house is big enough to accommodate them, and there will still be space. He also wants to be close to his father. But No pressure was put on Ugochi because Dennis employed maids that was at their service. His special cook, a young lady named Rita, who has worked for him for so many years, and a driver who drives him when he wants to go out, and a gate man. So practically, Ugochi does nothing other than to be a good wife and a good daughter-in-law to her husband and her father-in-law. One day, they were all sitting at the sitting room. Dennis and Richard was having a discussion about a business deal they accomplished. Dennis was very happy and decided to increase Richard's salary. Richard was very happy and thanked his father. And Dennis said, "You don't need to thank me. I promised myself to make you a multi-billionaire before you turn 30. Richard was happy and promised his father not to disappoint him. Ugochi, who was seated there, was angry because she felt neglected. Then she shouted, "I wonder if I'm still part of this family." And she walked away. Dennis and Richard was surprised at her behavior. They don't know what made her acted that way. Richard followed her to know what was the problem. He asked, "Why do you act that way?" Ugochi replied, "Why does your father remind me that my father left nothing for me?" Richard said, "What do you mean by that?" Ugochi said, "Why can't your father make me a manager in one of his company? Why?" Richard replied, "Oh, is that why you are acting like this? I will talk to my father. That is not a problem. I will talk to him about it." She shouted, "Must you talk to your father before you can make me a manager in one of his company? I thought you are a man, but obviously you are not." Richard said, "My dear, you don't even need to work because I pay you every month. But if you decide to work, I will talk to my father about it." But Ugochi was not satisfied, so she went to bed angrily. From that day, Ugochi's character changed and she started disrespecting her father-in-law. Richard told his father about what his wife said, but his father told him that he should be firm in making decisions, but love his wife unconditionally. Richard thanked his father for the advice and left. The next day, Ugochi asked Rita, the cook, to make beans for breakfast. Rita told her that Mr. Dennis don't like beans, but she insisted that Rita makes the beans for breakfast. When it was ready, Ugochi called her father-in-law to come and eat. When Mr. Dennis saw that it was beans, he told her that he don't like beans. Then Ugochi flared up. She said, "So, after all the stress I went through to make breakfast for you, you don't want to eat, Abby? No problem. But for your information, nobody will cook any other food in this house without my consent." Then she stormed out angrily. She went to the room to meet her husband. Richard asked her, "Babe, why is your face like this?" Ugochi replied, "Is it not your father? I went through the stress of preparing breakfast for him. but he said he don't want to eat. Richard said, okay, if he said he don't want to eat, that is not a problem. The maids are there to attend to him. Anyway, that is not your work. I have told you that you don't need to do anything in this house. The maids are at our service. He said and left for work. While Mr. Dennis asked Rita the cook to prepare another breakfast for him. When she was making the meal, Ugochi came and chased her out of the kitchen and locked the door, saying that she don't want to see her in the kitchen again, that she decides what happened in this house. She said and left. Throughout that day, Ugochi did not open the kitchen, so Mr. Dennis did not eat anything since morning. When Richard returned from work, his father, Mr. Dennis, tried to talk to him about his wife's behavior. He said, "My son, when you get to the room, please help me and ask your wife why she locked the kitchen since morning and leave me hungry." Richard replied, "Dad, I have told you that Ugochi is not your maid. There are maids in this house. Let them assist you in whatever you want them to do. Please, I'm very tired," he said and left to the room. Mr. Dennis looked at him in amazement. The next day, Ugochi went to see Richard's friend, Frank, to ask him to talk to Richard to put his father in his place, that she cannot be controlled in her husband's house. Frank assured her that he will talk to Richard about it. That weekend, Frank invited Richard to talk to him about Ugochi's complaints. He said, "My friend, what are you doing about your father staying in the same house with you? It will not be healthy for your marriage." Richard replied, "I'm trying my best." Frank said, "Your best is not enough because your wife is complaining. If you love your wife, take your father to the village. That is where old people live, not in the city. And you should also know that my father is in the village too. That is where they belong, close to their ancestors." Richard said, "You know, you build your house with your own money, but me, I'm staying in my father's house. It will not be easy to chase him out of his own house. He built it with his money. Don't you think so? I even allow my wife to treat him with disrespect, but he is not irritated at all. My father is a calm man and very peaceful. No matter what you do to him, he will not be upset." Frank said, "Your wife needs to put more effort. In fact, tell her to come and I will teach her these tactics to use and frustrate that old man so he can pack and leave the house to the village." And they both talked for length and laughed. The next day, Ugochi came to see Frank and he gave her tips on what to do to frustrate her father-in-law so he can get tired and leave the house. When she got home, he called all the maids, paid them off, and sacked them, from the driver to the cleaner and even the gate man, leaving only the cook, but warned her profusely that if she flaunts her orders, she will also be sacked. Later that day, when Mr. Dennis wanted to go to church, he called his driver, but no response. Then Rita, the cook, told him how Ugochi sacked all the maids except her. He sighed, and entered his car and left. That night, he called his son and his wife to talk to them. He said, "Richard, please help me and ask your wife why she sacked my workers, people she did not employ. Is that not the height of disrespect?" Richard said, "Dad, I believe my wife have a reason for doing so. And we don't even need much workers in this household, so we can manage our resources. I think that is why she sacked them. Please, Dad, I'm tired and I'm going to work tomorrow. I need to go and sleep." They both stand up and left to their room. Ugochi did not stop there. She went to the village and invited her mother to come and help her to frustrate her father-in-law. She said, "Mama, Richard have a lot of money. Oh. There is so many money in that house. But I am not enjoying it because of one old gray-haired man that called himself my father-in-law." Her mother said, "Who is making my daughter not to enjoy her husband's money?" Ugochi replied, "Is it not my father-in-law? He wants to be in control of everything in that house. Mama, I'm tired though. I want to be in charge so that I can control everything in that house. That is why I want you to come with me and join force with me so we can frustrate that old stinky man and chase him out of the house." Ugochi's mother agreed and she went to the city with her daughter. When they got to the city, Mr. Dennis was surprised to see Ugochi's mother, but he welcomed her. He said, "My in-law, I don't know that you were coming. I would have prepared something delicious for you." Ugochi's mother replied, "Can't I come to my daughter's house without informing you, old wicked man?" Mr. Dennis saw that she came for trouble, so he did not reply her. Few minutes later, Ugochi came to ask Mr. Dennis that her mother needs a room. He told her that her mother can use the guest room, but Ugochi insisted that her mother will like to stay in his late wife's room. But Mr. Dennis refused. That night, when Richard came back from work, Richard asked his father to open his late mother's room and pack her luggage to another room so his mother-in-law can use the room. But Mr. Dennis refused. So Richard told him that he has no choice than to break the room. The next day, Richard did as he had said. He broke the room, evacuated his late mother's belongings for his mother-in-law to stay in the room. Mr. Dennis was very angry and sad. He did not know why his son is behaving like that. He sat down on his bed, looking at a photo of a little boy. It was the photo of Richard when he was little. Ugochi and her mother made the house a living hell for Mr. Dennis. They will cook and eat without giving to Mr. Dennis. And Ugochi will even go to the extent of locking the kitchen so that Rita the cook will not be able to prepare meals for Mr. Dennis. One evening, Mr. Dennis called Ugochi's mother to talk to her. He said, "My in-law, I have been observing you since you came, and I noticed you came prepared for trouble. But I don't have that strength. Please, I want you to help me talk to your daughter to change her behavior, because it will not do her any good." But Ugochi's mother insulted Mr. Dennis, calling him a wicked, old, wretched man that don't want her daughter to enjoy in her husband's house. Few days later, Ugochi's mother left for the village, encouraging her daughter to continue her bad attitude. Few days later, Mr. Dennis fell ill and could not stand up from the bed. He asked Rita to go call his son, but he refused to come. After several attempts, he came. Then Mr. Dennis told him that he is not feeling well, that he should take him to the hospital. But Richard refused, saying that he is late for work, that he will send a doctor to come and attend to him at home. After a few days of being treated at home, Mr. Dennis called his son again. He told him, "My son, please take me to the hospital. I'm not getting any better." But Richard refused to take him to the hospital. That evening, Richard went to see his friend, Frank, and told him about all that is happening, that his father has refused to go to the village despite the ill treatment. Then Frank suggested they should take him to an old people's home. Richard reasoned about it and buy the idea. Then Richard and Ugochi make their research and look for an old people's home to take Mr. Dennis to. Rita the cook got to know about their plans and told Mr. Dennis about it. Few days later, Richard told his father that since he is complaining about how he is being treated by his wife, that he has decided to take him to a place where they will take good care of him. Ugochi packed Mr. Dennis' bag. When they were about to leave, Mr. Dennis said to Richard, "So, Richard, you have successfully thrown me out of my own house, the house I built with my money." Ugochi shouted, "Honey, please, let's go. We don't have all day." They entered the car and drove out. Rita stand looking very sad. When they arrived at the place, Mr. Dennis and the Reverend in charge of the home were discussing and laughing. Richard and Ugochi stand in amazement. Richard asks, "Sir, do you know my father?" The Reverend replied, "Who do not know Mr. Dennis? He is a very good and kind-hearted man." Richard said, "Okay, that's good. So where can we drop his bag? And how will I make the payment?" Mr. Dennis and the Reverend laughed. The Reverend went to where Richard was standing. He showed him a photo. He said, "Do you know the person in this photo?" Richard responded, "Yes, that is me." The Reverend continued. He said to him, "You see, Mr. Dennis here is a good man. He was the one that built this old people's home and also our new orphanage many years ago. You see this boy in this photo, showing him the picture, was abandoned at the gate in front of the orphanage. He was diagnosed of lungs infection. Everyone rejected him, but Mr. Dennis here decided to adopt him and promised to take care of him and make him a multi-billionaire before he turned 30. So my son, that kind of a person, is he not a good person?" Richard was dumbfounded. He was shocked and surprised as tears rolled down his cheek. Ugochi, who was standing there, was also shocked as she heard all what the Reverend said. They went back home quietly. Richard tried begging his father to forgive him for all that he has done to him, but Mr. Dennis gave him no audience. The next day, Mr. Dennis' lawyer came to the house to read the new will. Mr. Dennis' business was given to the orphanage, while his houses was given to Rita, the cook. And he gave Richard and his wife notice to vacate the house immediately. Richard and Ugochi was very sad. They were filled with shame and regret. Richard said to his father, he said, "Dad, I know what I've done to you is unspeakable, but I want you to know that you are the best dad on earth." Then he left with Ugochi in shame. Richard blamed Ugochi for his predicament and chased her away. Ugochi went back to her mother's house in the village and lived all her life in regret. While Richard went to his friend's place, Frank, to find solace, but Frank rejected him. So he went back to the village to start from nowhere. While Rita the cook lived with Mr. Dennis as his daughter. So today, I will be bringing the moral lesson of the story from the Bible. Proverbs 16 verse 18 to 19. It says, "Pride goes before destruction, and a hunting spirit before a fall. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud." I want you to know that pride is very destructive. In any way we find ourselves, we should be humble. That is what also happened to Vashti in the book of Esther. She was elevated, but because of pride, she was brought to nothing. So in any place you find yourself, be of a humble spirit. Hi, beautiful people of African Folktales by Ify Best. Hope you enjoy the story. Please let me know in the comment section where you are watching from and what you learned from this story. Please, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so and like and share this story with your loved ones. Until I bring another story your way, it is a bye from here.